Good evening, everyone. My name is LaCole, and I will be persuading you to look at racism in a different light. No one likes to be judged by the color of their skin, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they smell, nothing. Being judged is not a good feeling at all. And although slavery was abolished back in 1865, people of color still feel enslaved to society. As a woman of color, I've had my share of racially profiled situations, and I can attest that they were not fun. I made me feel well. I'm just being me. Why do you not like me? If that's how it makes you feel. Racism it still exists in the 21st century, and people of color often feel as if they're the targets of stereotyping, shootings, and other violent acts. Racism in America can be ended in a God-honoring way by simply coming together and loving our brother and sister. God says, treat others as if you want to be treated, and love one another as I have loved you. Those are two prevalent verses because for the fact that they show you how God wants you to love, how He wants you to give that agape love to your brother or your sister, to treat them in a way that you would like to be treated. For my main points, I would like to persuade you to think that how do minorities feel categorized and targeted? You may not be a person of color and you don't understand how we may feel targeted or profiled, but we do. My second point is to persuade you to show some people how they are being offensive when they do not know. And my third point to persuade you is how we as a nation can come together to change things. First, let's look at how minorities feel racially categorized or targeted. Since the 2012 shooting of Trayvon Martin, minorities have felt targeted. Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old young man who was visiting his father in his neighborhood, and he was described as suspicious. There was a neighborhood watchman under the name of George Zimmerman who felt that Trayvon Martin was suspicious, that he shouldn't be there. He approached him. Once he approached him, a fight ensued and ended fatally, leaving Trayvon Martin deceased. This could have been avoided had he not saw a person of color with a hood, Skittles, and a sweet tea or green tea and thought he's up to no good. That is just one example of why we feel targeted. He chose to look at him as a stereotype and not actually find out who he was. Minorities and or people of color also feel targeted because of the high rise of shootings involving unarmed black persons. Just last month, Jamel Robertson was trying to save people from a gunman at a nightclub. The call came in, there was a man with a gun. Police showed up, saw him with a gun, and shot him, not bothering to ask questions. Had they got there and assessed the situation and spoken with him, they would have knew that he was actually the one who had protected the people that could have been shot. Next, let's look at the instances where those who are not minorities state that they don't understand the offenses. In October of 2018, talk show host Megyn Kelly decided that she wanted to dress up in blackface. She painted her face black. She came out in costume where she was attacked in a way so bad of how offensive she was being that she was forced to resign. Megyn Kelly did not understand why people were so upset. Blackface started years ago, and although I genuinely do not feel that people are trying to be offensive or poke fun at people of color, it still comes off as picking on minorities because back in the times of slavery, people wore blackface as a show, and it was something that was to entertain, make fun of black people to entertain. Another instance is where for Halloween, there were several ladies who dressed in blackface. One lady wanted to be Michael Jackson, and she put on black makeup. That was not a tar-like paint on her face, but she still ended up offending people because no one understood why she was making fun of black people or people of color, but ideally she just wanted to be Michael Jackson. She thought it would be funny. People who are not people of color do not see how they are upsetting some people of color because again, they don't feel as if they are have an offense against people of color. And we must educate our Caucasian friends, our Puerto Rican friends, our friends who are not minorities because they just don't know. I can't say something that I think it's funny and offend my Caucasian friend. She may not feel the same way I feel about it, but I'm just being funny. But to her, I have offended her and I do not know it. I can't say something about my Puerto Rican friend. And again, to me, I am laughing like, girl, did you know? Meanwhile, she's, it hurt her feelings. She did not like what I said. So we must be sensitive to how we feel, how others feel. Lastly, how can we become unified as a nation? Being that minorities feel attacked, so to speak, and targeted, there should be ways that non-minorities or people that are not people of color can do to help us feel accepted. I feel that understanding why someone feels the way they do about a feeling can help. Like, I can't tell you that blackface makes me upset, but then you don't care to understand why. The blackface situation, as I stated before, was something that happened years ago to kind of poke fun at black people. It was entertaining. We didn't necessarily feel funny, we felt degraded. So now that when we see a person who is not a minority or a person of color doing the blackface, not every African American or person of color says, haha, that's a good one. No, we look at it as if, why is that funny? That's not funny. But the person who's doing it may not see it that way. So to talk and communicate would be a great way to explain to them, this is how this made me feel and why. Once understanding happens, we may be able to maybe walk in someone else's shoes to be able to see what it feels like. Maybe you don't know what it's like to be a minority. So maybe you should follow a minority around or see some of the things that, we see. In conclusion, I feel like we must come together in order for this to work. Racism and prejudices are very much still alive and true to this day. I can attest to that by being a woman of color, and it needs to be fixed. I close with this. There are racism across the world, but not from everyone. And you may come in contact with not everyone that you may come in contact with. In my 27 years of life, I have witnessed discrimination, and I feel that we must take a stand because if not, it's going to still happen to everyone else's kids, and it's going to be a trend that's going to keep happening because no one's understanding it. So today I ask you to get to know your fellow minorities and to see how they feel about things that are going on in the world today. I bet you'll understand this more. Thanks for listening.